Hello everyone, and welcome to tonight's Friday with Irina show. As promised, tonight I will overlook the first day of the second division of the online chess Olympiad, the one where the Romanian team started to play today. We had quite a successful day today, I would say. We won 2 matches, and one match we made a draw. Sperry said that I look so sober today. Yeah, today is a professional day, so just water tonight. Hello Hipside, hello Completex, nice to see everyone on the stream. So there were no incidents today. Everything was ran quite smoothly, I would say. The Zoom call, the arbiters checks, and so on. So let's start with the first interesting game I wanted to look at. I've selected a few, as there are quite a lot, as you can imagine. So the team is composed of 6 players, 2 men boards, 2 women boards, one board a junior girl, and another one a junior boy. Junior meaning under 20 years old. So here is the first game when we played against Singapore. Actually, it was in the second round. In the first round, I think we won quite smoothly against the team of the International Federation for People with Disabilities. So I will start with the second match, as I was saying, against Singapore. And on the first board played a 2357 rated player against our Constantin Lupulescu, our first rated Romanian player and our top board here at the online Olympiad. So let's start checking the game. d4, d5, c4, e6, knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, knight bd7. This is a system which gained quite some popularity lately. Alright, knight d7, bishop f4, d takes c4, e4, all theory so far, bishop e4, bishop c4, knight e4. So white sacrifices a pawn to get some activity. And of course, white has some compensation for it, though in rapid time controls, I would say that it's easier to play for the side with material up. At least that's how I prefer to do it. Short castle, knight c3, b takes. Well, bishop takes c3 would probably be too much in this position, because of at least rook b1 or maybe even d5 can work. So bishop d6 is a more logical move. Being a pawn up, black is happy to swap some pieces. Bishop g3, short castle. The main problem in black's position looked like that bishop on c8, so if black would be able to develop it in the next moves, then the pawn should make the difference. Knight e5 followed, queen e7, rook e1, rook e8, rook e3. I think white played really well up to this point, bringing as many pieces into a potential attack against black's king. Knight f8, queen h5, knight g6, bishop d3 now, pinning that knight so that it cannot take on e5 because the pawn on h7 is hanging. Bishop d7 followed. Rook f3. Well, rook f3 isn't exactly the best move in the position because it missed this nice idea which Grandmaster Lupulescu found f5. Instead, white should have just tried to increase the pressure, maybe by playing rook a to e1. After rook f3, the nice move, which I was saying, was f5. The point is that after knight g6, h takes, queen f7, you can see that black's bishop will soon come to c6. So even though black sacrificed its extra pawn, all the problems in black's position are solved. Queen g5 followed. Of course, white doesn't want to trade queens because then black maybe will even be better. Bishop c6 followed. Bishop takes d6. Well, this was an interesting exchange sacrifice. Hello, Kuro-san. Well, this is the game between Tin Jingyao and Grandmaster Lupulescu from the second match Romania played against Singapore. Okay. Bishop takes f3, bishop e5, bishop h5 followed. Well, yeah, like I said, white sacrificed an exchange, but has still some pressure versus black's king. h3 followed, queen g6, queen e3, queen f7, king h2, bishop g6, queen g5, bishop h7. Probably black's idea is to somehow prepare playing f4. So that's all that piece shifting, what it was meant for. Rook e1, queen g6, queen d2, rook e7, rook e3, a good move I'd say, queen h6. And now it feels like white should have played f4, which would make black's life a little bit difficult, to be honest. I'm not sure how black would handle that bad bishop on h7 and the monster bishop on e5 controlling everything. Probably that would pose some problems, yeah, for black. Instead, white played queen e2, and then f4 happened. Now bishop h7, king h7, rook e4 followed. Probably rook f3 would be the best move in order to play against black's idea of pushing f3 himself. Instead, after rook e4, rook f8, f3 will eventually follow. Queen g4, g5, rook e1, rook f5. So you see, instead of having a really bad bishop on h7 versus a good bishop on d3, I mean, if white would have played f4, now there are no bad pieces in black's position, and black keeps the exchange up. King g1 followed, rook f7, queen f3, c6, a few careful moves, a4, a6, a5, king g8. There's no need to hurry when your material up. Rook b1, rook d7, king h2, king f7, queen e4, queen g6. And here white blundered by playing queen f3, and after rook takes e5, black is left with the whole rook up because the rook on b1 is hanging. And that's how our first board, Grandmaster Lupulescu, won his first game during today's Olympiad. Well, to conclude it, I think white played a very decent game up to some point, sacrificing interestingly a pawn and then an exchange, but then probably due to the lack of time struggled to find the best continuation. All right, let's move to the next game now. I will not play matches with viewers tonight. I will just overview our games, I mean Romania's games from today, as yeah, these 3 days I will be busy playing in the online chess Olympiad. The time control of the event was 10 minutes plus 5 seconds, so 5-second increment. Practically it's like rapid chess. Alright, The next game I want to show is one of my own, also from the match against Singapore. I played with the black pieces versus woman grandmaster Gong Qian Yun, rated 23-22. It was a Sicilian with bishop b5, g6, short castle bishop g7, rook e1, and now this strange looking but really popular move knight h6 followed. I prepared it for the game. And here the main theory goes like c3, short castle. Of course, white could also take on c6 and then play c3, d4, or maybe d3, h3, depending with which pawn black will capture back on c6. Instead, my opponent played a really strange move, which is d4, going for a pawn sacrifice, a move I did not consider at all. I thought, why not to take a free pawn if it's offered? So knight takes d4, take, c takes d4. Now the point is that bishop h6 isn't really dangerous because of bishop h6, and after queen d4 I have short castle. And with the pair of bishops I cannot really have any problems in the position. Instead here she played c3. After c3 I had a choice to either take the pawn and play with the pawn up, but with some problems. So for example, d takes c3, knight c3, short castle. I really struggled to find a way for my knight from h6, so I was not sure I will have a good way to bring it back to the game. And after bishop e3, I would say that white would have decent compensation. That's why after c3 I decided to go for short castle, c takes d4, and now d5. Well, this is a typical move. Now if white takes on d5, then white will be left with an isolated pawn, and then the knight will come very nicely to f5, attacking the pawn on d4. So e5 is a natural move, knight f5 followed. And here that's how I solved the problem. I have the bad knight on h6. Knight c3, queen b6. A very concrete approach. I am attacking the pawn on d4, and in the same time white cannot capture on d5 because the bishop on b5 is hanging. And here my opponent really surprised me by playing g4. I was only expecting bishop e3, and then I planned on something like e6. Then probably a6, bishop d7, then trying to control somehow the c-file, maybe potentially going away with the queen from b6 and playing b5, b4. That was what I expected, how I expected the game to develop. Instead, she played g4. Well, it involves a pawn sacrifice, knight takes d4, and now white had a choice to either play bishop e3, pinning the knight to the queen, or to play immediately knight takes d5. After knight d5, I wouldn't have taken that bishop from b5 because of knight e7 check, king h8 forced, and queen takes d4, and white is actually left with the pawn up. Instead, after knight d5, I was planning to play queen c5. And here after knight e7, I can play king h8. And let's say after bishop e3, queen takes e5. And all white's pieces are hanging. The bishop from b5, the knight from e7, and in case of bishop d4, just queen takes d4 is enough to have a balanced position, but one which I have absolutely no problems because white has weakened his pawn structure. So instead of this, after knight d4, she chose bishop e3, bishop takes e5 is forced, knight takes d5. And here the first thing which comes to mind is of course taking on b5, but actually it was an inaccuracy which I made. The best move in the position was queen d6, and I actually remember I remember spending quite a lot of time in the position, but somehow I failed to realize that here I would be much better. The point is that after knight e7, I'm not forced to take that knight, and I can just play king h8, and the bishop from b5 is hanging, and knight on e7 is not really the best piece. And if bishop d4, then I would have bishop h2 check, and it doesn't actually matter where white king goes, h1, g2 or f1, because anyway I would play queen d5, and even imagine the king is on f1, that's no difference because the bishop on b5 is still hanging. So king h2, queen takes b5, and here black is 2 pawns up. Of course white would have some compensation because of the different colored bishops, but it shouldn't be enough for anything serious. Alright, so instead of queen d6 I played queen b5, knight takes c7, king g7, bishop d4, and here I found the only move. Actually I saw it before going into this whole variation, f6. The problem is that I cannot capture on d4 instead, as after queen d4, f6, knight d5, my position looks nearly lost because the king is weak and the knight on d5 is a monster. So f6 is the only move in the position, and here my opponent probably had to play well, a4 is still a good move, queen d7 now. Yeah, and here she had to take on e5, f takes e5, and go for all the simplifications. If queen d7, bishop d7, and the pawn on g4 is hanging, while if knight c8 I can just take on g1, take on c8, and after rook e5 I have rook c4 with double attack on the a4 and g4 pawns, which leaves the position pretty balanced. Probably it would have been a draw. Instead my opponent made a really strange sacrifice, rook takes e5, which loses on the spot, because after f takes e5, bishop takes e5, king f7, it's not, white is not only an exchange down, but is losing also the knight from e7. And in case white would try to play knight d5, then just queen g4 would follow, and after the exchange of the queens, black is just an exchange up with a totally winning position. So instead she tried to muddy the waters a bit by playing queen b3, and here maybe after king e7, rook d1, she maybe would have had some sort of compensation, I don't know. So that's why I played queen e6, just not to allow any counterplay, queen e3, queen takes e7, rook e1, king g8, and well, black is simply a rook up, and in like 10 moves or so I won this game, which was the first win for me in this online Olympiad. Alright, let's move on to the next game I prepared for today, which is the game also from the same match of Romania versus Singapore. Thank you for following, Vorgod Barde. So here Mihaela Sandu, a woman grandmaster from Romania, played against a woman FIDE master from Singapore, and actually this game was really interesting, as black played a really good game. So let's check it out. e4, c5. So yeah, Romania's Sandu Mihaela was with the white pieces. Knight f3, knight c6, d4, c takes, knight f6, knight c3, e5, the Sveshnikov, the also popular Sveshnikov, knight db5, d6, bishop g5. It feels like actually in all these variations black is doing fine. That's what I feel. Knight a3, b5, knight d5, bishop e7, all theory so far. Take, take. Well, here white has two main moves, c3 and c4. c3 is a more aggressive one, while c4 is a more strategical one. Mihaela played c3, bishop g5, knight c2, knight e7, knight b4. I think it's still theory. Short castle, bishop e2, a5, take on e7, take, knight d5, queen b7. And here white's position looks really good because of that good knight on d4, on d5, and the forever control over that square. Also, the pawn on d6 is somewhat weak. In the same time, black has its own advantages, the pair of bishops, as well as quite an easy play. Black's plan is probably to either play b4 or f5. I would prefer the f5 plan, trying to create some threats over white's king at some point. White played queen d3, rook b8, defending the b5 pawn, short castle, bishop e6. All the moves are natural so far, and I think this position was appeared before in another games. Rook fd1, king h8. Well, king h8 is a typical move, preparing f5, a3, f5. Yeah, quite easy. That's what I don't like when playing with white these positions, that it's really easy for black to play. Bishop f3, queen a7, rook f1. White had to do something about that pawn on f2, because eventually after taking on e4, white wouldn't be able to take with the bishop because the pawn on f2 would be hanging. f4. f4 is a really strange looking move, which at the first glance I condemned, because I thought, okay, what is black doing? Is he really like closing the only flank where he can play? More natural would feel something like queen f7, and then, I don't know, queen g6, then double on the f-file, something along those lines. But that move appeared to be not as bad as I would think. b4, a good move. Bishop d8. Actually, black's idea is to play like in the king's Indian defense, to close up the center and then to attack with the pawns on the king side. So probably black's plan is g5 followed by g4, f3, and so on. That's why white played h3. I didn't really like this move, because then the h3 pawn becomes a target, so g5, g4 will come even better for black. Instead, I think maybe white could have tried playing a4 immediately, because b takes a4 is met by the typical b5, and white has this really nice passer. After c4, rook takes a4, we will get the pawn back, and black will struggle attacking on the king side, because he will always have to look after this dangerous pawn on b5. Instead, h3 followed, which was a bit like a loss of time, I would say. g5, a4 now, b takes a4, and here again, I'm not sure, maybe b5 immediately was better, because it wouldn't allow the move which happened in the game, rook a4, queen d7. A really important move by black, and now white doesn't have time to play b5, unfortunately. Rook f to a1 followed, and g4. And here black was really in time with the attack, even though I'm not sure this whole attack was that good altogether. Let's see. H takes g4, a b4, c b4, rook g8, rook a7. Anyhow, it feels like there are no real threats over white's king, while white was successful in creating this passed pawn on the b file. Rook b7, queen b7, b5. Here white has quite a good advantage, I'd say. Bishop g4, rook g4, queen h3, rook g8. But here, I don't know if because of the time, as I did not see the clocks in this moment, but I assume it was the lack of time why white played the move b6, which is a bit of a strange one, as she just gives up this really good pawn. Instead, white could have played king h2, preventing all those f3s eventually if the queen goes away. Now queen b5 is not possible because of rook a7, threatening a mate on h7. And after rook g7 there is this really nice move, which probably wasn't so easy to be spotted with low time, queen h6. The rook on g7 is hanging, it cannot be defended, and the problem is that after capturing on a7, queen f8 mate happens. Yeah, maybe she didn't see bishop takes f2 after rook b1, though I think probably that's not the case. Maybe she thought that she would lose the b5 pawn anyway, that's why she played it. After b6, bishop takes b6, it's now white who has to be very precise not to get worse. And probably it was necessary to take on b6 and play something like queen h6, trying to escape delivering a perpetual. I mean, with queen f6, and then after rook g7, queen f8. I mean, if black's queen goes somewhere, queen d8, probably rook a6 should be fine. Well, black is a pawn up, but the position should be really drawish. But well, it's not so easy after you were better the whole game to start thinking how to make a draw, so white continued pushing, and she played knight f6, but then rook f8, queen h6, queen g7. And suddenly there is absolutely no attack, and white has to go for the queen exchange. Knight d7, bishop d4, rook a6, rook c8. And the problem is that after rook d6, rook c1, king h2, bishop f2, black is keeping the pawn, and in the same time white's king is in real danger. So black went on to win this game, which was the first upset in Romania's team today. But I was really impressed by black's play, as the rating of the Singaporean player was only 2060. But she played like a really good game from some point. Alright, let's move to the next game. And to the most important match we had today. White king in mate, maybe with h5. Indeed, complete X. That was the problem, that white's king is in a mating net there. So in the match versus Greece, we made 3-3, but it wasn't all draws. There was a win, a loss, and 4 draws. So on the first board, Grandmaster Lupulescu Constantin had white versus Grandmaster Master Vasilis Dimitrios. This game was quite interesting, as white had an edge for almost the whole game. Knight f3, d5, e3, knight f6, c4, c6, d4, bishop g4. Not the most usual line in the Slav. h3, bishop f3, queen f3. So black gives up the pair of bishops with the hope to be able to exchange as many pieces as possible with the next few moves. And well, actually I feel like these kind of positions are for 2 results. Like white doesn't risk anything and black either survives it or not. Which some players love to play this kind of positions, but I'm not one of them, to be honest. Alright, e6, knight c3, bishop d6, bishop d3, queen e7, bishop d2. So white is being tricky here, saying that, oh, well, I don't know, maybe I want to castle long, maybe I want to castle short. Knight d7 followed, c takes d5 now. E takes d5 is, well, a natural move, even though c takes d5 would also be possible, but then black would have to count with this knight b5 move. Probably that's why he decided to take with the e pawn, and here the aggressive g4 followed, which is kind of a typical move in these structures. Bishop b4, long castle, king b1. Here white has quite a pleasant position, as black's knights are not really well placed, and they will struggle to find some good squares for themselves. Knight b6, a3, bishop c3, bishop c3. Well, here I don't know. For me it felt like the most natural plan for black would be to play something like knight e8 and then knight d6, and then try to do something like knight e4 and to stay solid. Instead, black played king b8, bishop b4, queen e6, queen e2. Well, here again, I'm not sure. I think that I like more some moves like knight e4. Well, white still has the advantage, obviously, because of the pair of bishops and the fact that black has no counterplay whatsoever. So white can decide to play on the king side, to play in the center. Instead, black went for the active and natural move h5, but after this f3 followed, and now knight e4 is no longer possible, and we can see how black will struggle finding good places for its knights in the game. H takes g4, h takes g4, king a8, bishop f5 now, queen e8. And here, already knowing what happened in the game, well, it's quite easy to say, but here g5 followed, which was maybe a bit too fast. Maybe white had to wait a bit more with that move, because then it was easy for black to play, and the problem of finding a good square for the knight solved by itself. So perhaps it could be better to try and take on h8, queen h8, now bishop d3, queen h4, let's say. Feels natural to try to double on the h file and then try to exchange queens. Rook g1, rook h8, bishop e1. And the bishop is coming to g3, maybe then to e5. In event of exchanging the queens, I'm not even sure that black will be happy about it, as it might become even more difficult to play against white's pair of bishops. So, yeah, probably Konstantin would have chosen this in a classical game, but in these shorter time controls games, sometimes we don't have the time we want to ponder all our decisions. So g5 followed, but here knight h5. The threat is knight g3, of course. White has to play bishop d3, and here g6 come. And now we see that the knight from h5, even though it looks not so well placed, it has a very easy route to g7 and then to f5. So that's why g5 was perhaps a bit too hasty. Queen f2 followed, queen d7, rook h4, knight g7, rook h1, take, take, and knight e6. Well, knight f5 was another possibility, but probably rook f4 would have been the answer to it. So knight e6, queen g3, knight c4, bishop c4, d takes c4, and here the position is already equal. Black managed to solve the problems of his knights, and there are no reasons for white to claim an advantage. So in a few moves the game was drawn. So it was the first draw in the match. Let's move on to the next game. Let me try to find it. Alright, so let's check the game from the same match versus Greece of our young star, Bogdan Daniel Deac, Romania's number 2 rated, I think, player. He has a rating over 2600, and actually he was the one to bring the victory. The victory, the only win in the match. E4, c5. Bogdan is with the white pieces versus Alexakis Dimitris, rated 2250. Knight f3, e6, d4, c takes, knight c6, knight c3, queen c7. Here a very fancy move followed, queen d3. It became quite popular lately, and even though it looks quite strange, the idea behind it is actually quite simple. Black has a few options here. One of them is to play a6. Then white's main idea is illustrated the best after knight c6, b takes, and queen g3. So white wants to go for a better endgame, as the bishop on c8 is kind of buried. After queen g3, let's say h takes, d5, knight a4. White's play is really easy. b3, bishop b2, c4, something along those lines. And black will struggle the whole game with his slightly more passive position. Alright, in the game after queen d3, knight f6 happened, Sperry is saying that he knows so little about this very important position. Well, there's always room for improvement. Don't worry, Sperry. Alright, after knight f6, Bogdan played knight db5, queen b8, and the same idea of queen g3. But here black is forced to play d6, as taking on g3 is not really good because knight c7 will be a threat later on. d6 followed, bishop e3 now. a6, knight d4. Bishop d7, bishop d3. And now we get to this normal Sicilians. I don't even know to call it a Scheveningen or a Taimanov. Not sure how to classify this position. Where white's queen is a little bit strangely placed on g3, which I'm not sure is a bad thing, because from here it eyes the pawn on g7, so that black's bishop doesn't have an easy way to e7, and in the same time the pawn on d6 may become a target at some point. h5 was a good move, I think, in order to try to get rid of this queen on g3. f4 followed, b5, h3, knight d4, bishop d4. And here I think black already went wrong by playing b4, even though I'm not sure what to suggest instead. Alright, b4, knight b1. Now the knight is having a really good rerouting through d2 to c4 or to b3. Bishop c6 followed, knight d2 defending the pawn, queen b7. And here was the first moment when white played a little bit inaccurate. He played queen f3, which is not really bad, but it was just better to place it on e3 so that it won't be reneged by this bishop on c6 and queen on b7. Hello, Vorgad Barde. If I ever won against Grandmaster Deac, well, actually I did win once, but it was a blitz game. Even though a rated one, I played a really terrible tournament, while Bogdan played a fantastic tournament there. It was during the King's tournament in Mediash a few years ago, and he won the tournament. And he qualified for playing a mini match against Vladimir Kramnik. This was at stake at that tournament, and he went on to make 2-2, I think, versus Vladimir, or was it 1-1? I just remember that it was an equal score. And actually it is funny because the game he lost against me was the only one he lost in the tournament, while I took the last place. So I had a really unfortunate event, but a really fortunate win. Otherwise, in classical chess, I think Bogdan won once against me, and he was really young at the time and still 2200 rated, so I remember that was a painful loss. Alright, let's move on to the game. He played queen f3, and here probably d5 would have been quite good, as e takes d5 is not possible because of bishop takes d5 and then the pawn on g2 is hanging, while after e5 black has knight e4. Well, actually it's nearly what happened in the game as well, just with a little bit of a delay. Bishop e7 was played, short castle, and now d5. e5, knight e4. Here white played the good move, knight b3, and black went wrong here. Obviously, white's idea is to play f5 at some point and to try and attack over black's king. And that's the reason why it was absolutely vital for black to play g6 in order to stop white from playing f5. White is still better here, as after knight a5, queen c7, let's say, knight c6, queen c6. Well, white will have the pair of bishops, also the knight on e4 may run into some troubles, while if it goes back on c5, then maybe c3 will be possible, opening up the c line. So black would be still far from solving all his problems, but anyway, that was the best try. Instead, black played a5, and here Bogdan played the really good logical move f5. Well, f takes e6 is already a threat, followed by queen f7. And here, the only move to not to get really worse was bishop d7, so that after f takes e6, black could take with the bishop. And then after rook a to e1, still white is much better, but still not winning. In the game, the young Alex Sakis played knight g5. And here after queen f4, e takes f5, bishop takes f5, short castle, knight c5. We can see how black has only problems in the positions. He has bad bishop on c6, a lot of weak squares, ill-placed knight on g5, who cannot unfortunately go to e6, and a really weakened king. So I cannot really highlight anything good about black's position. Queen c7 followed, queen e3 now, defending once again the knight on c5 so that bishop b5 won't surprise us. And in the same time, queen e3 prepares the move e6. Rook a to d8 followed, and now after e6, black is like in real big trouble. f6 wouldn't help him with anything, because after c3, b takes c3, white is much better. In the game, knight e4 happened, but here black loses by force. After e takes f7, rook f7, and bishop e6, white is winning material, and after some moves, black had to resign. So Bogdan was the only one to bring a full point during today's match versus Greece, a really important point. So congratulations to him. Let's move on to another game, which was on the second board. It was played between Grandmaster Stelios Halkias versus ours Grandmaster Perligras Mircea. It was again an interesting game. Knight f3, d5, d4, knight f6, c4, e6, g3, bishop b4, knight c3, short castle, bishop g2, d takes c4. I'm always calling it a Catalan, though it can arise as well from the Nimzo with a strange move g3, which is really popular among Greek players. It also occurred in one of my games, I think, versus one of the students of a Greek grandmaster who was actually playing in the team. Hello, Play Smart. Welcome to the stream. I'm fine, thank you. Quite happy about my performance today and looking forward to the next games. Alright, d takes c4, a3, bishop takes c3, b takes. Well, white sacrificed the pawn in this position, but got the pair of bishops as well. The pawn on c4 is not really easy to be held, so black might actually lose it at some point. c5. Well, that's the main move. Another possibility for black was to play knight c6, going for a different plan after short castle rook b8, having in mind b5 and trying to hold on to that pawn on c4. Both moves are possible. c5 maybe is better to my taste. Short castle followed, queen a5. And here white probably did not know the analysis or the theory anymore. Probably both players were already out of book by this point. And Grandmaster Halkias played bishop g5, which is an inaccuracy here. It was better to play bishop f4. Taking on c3 is anyway not an issue. That pawn is really dangerous to be taken. After d takes c5 there will be various threats, including bishop e5, bishop d6, also rook b1, maybe another unpleasant move. So black cannot consider taking on c3. And in the same time, after, let's say, knight d5, white would have this nasty move bishop d6 and then taking on c5. The position would be really complicated here. Thank you for following, Flavian Dynasty. Nice to see you. All right. Instead, in the game, bishop g5 happened, and the point is that here, compared to the position with bishop f4, knight d5 is possible. And if with the bishop on f4, this move would be met by bishop d6, attacking both the rook on f8 and the pawn on c5, here bishop e7 is not possible. So white would have to actually defend the pawn on c3, because now we want to capture it with the knight. So rook c1, knight c6 probably. Knight d2 is a natural move, trying to go for the pawn on c4. But here after f6, black is doing really well. Probably it's already better for black this position, because this bishop on g5 has no good square to go. And if we manage to exchange it, then we'll be doing great. Instead, Mircea played knight e4, which was a bit inaccurate, because bishop e7 will be possible at some point. So yeah, there was a little difference between these two moves, but quite an important one. So I feel that after this knight e4, it was already black who had to be really precise for the whole game in order to make it to a draw. So queen c2 followed, f5. You see that black really struggles with the development. The bishop on c8 is quite bad. Knight on b8 is no good as well. So yeah, black had to defend really well in this position. Bishop e7 followed, rook e8, bishop c5, knight c5, d takes, queen c5. And actually, I don't like this kind of positions when you just have to be very precise and to hope that it will be enough for making a draw. But I was really impressed by how Mircea managed to do so, even in such a short time control. So white played really well in this game, but so did black after making that inaccuracy of playing knight e4 instead of knight d5. Well, let's continue with the game. Knight d4, knight c6, take, queen a4, rook b8. You see, the difference is very simple. why would, if the question would be why is white better, good bishop versus bad bishop. Really simple. Good pawn structure versus bad pawn structure. And even though the bad pawn structure is not so bad, together with the bad bishop, that's where it gets dangerous. Rook a to b1 followed, bishop d7 now, rook f d1, and rook b5. A really nice move and a very important one to hold on the position. The point is that white cannot capture on d7 because of course the rook on b1 is hanging, and in the same time after rook b5 c takes b5 follows, and here black would already have been better. It would have been nice if the game would continue this way, because now the queen has to go away and white made our pawn structure healthy again, and in the same time bishop c6 will come and will neutralize this monster bishop on g2. Instead, white wisely played rook b4, attacking the pawn on c4, but here Mircea found rook a5, queen c2, bishop c8 back. The pawn on a3 is hanging, so a4, e5 now, trying to close up the bishop on g2 by playing e4, queen d2, and bishop e6. Now bishop d5 is a threat, e4 is also a possibility. That's why white played queen g5, trying to get active. Queen e7 followed, very good move. Queen takes e7, rook e7, bishop c6, rook c5. Well, now without the queens on the board, it's a little bit easier for black to breathe. Rook d6, king f7, rook b8, rook c7, bishop b5, rook d5, rook d5, bishop d5, f4, e takes, g takes, king e7, king f2, king d6, king e3, and here both players agreed for a draw, as there are absolutely no reasons for white to claim that he's better, but in the same time no reasons for black to claim that he's better, so it was quite a logical draw. Rook b5 was indeed a really nice and important move. Sperry. No, that's not a pyjama. Still not a pyjama today, though I plan on getting into one after the stream, just in time for the Bayern versus Barca match, which I hope to be in time to watch. And if you ask me who I'm cheering for, I'm afraid I'm not original at all by saying that I'm a Barca fan, probably because of Leo Messi, but, well, it will be, I feel, a really nice match to watch. Hello, Nikola Tesla, welcome to the stream. Let's move on quickly to the next game. The next game is actually mine. I played against Stavroula Tsolakidou, Greek's #1 rated player. She is rated over 2400. I was white. I played against her already a lot of times, so we know each other quite well. I had the white pieces, e4 followed, c5, knight f3, d6. She's really fond of playing the Najdorf, so I kind of expected it. And if you watched my streams before, you probably know that I fancy this h3, e5, knight b3 idea, especially when playing online. Bishop e6 followed, f4, bishop e7, bishop e3. Well, that's one of the lines. Another possibility was to go for f5. E takes f4, bishop takes f4. Even though I lost a tempi by playing bishop e3, there are some ideas behind this move. If you're really interested, you can check it out. Maybe you will find out a new variation for your repertoire. Knight c6. And here, unfortunately, I forgot my analysis and I played a really uninspired move, which was bishop e2. Instead, of course, it was much better to play queen e2 and then to castle long. For some reason, I considered only playing queen d2 in this position, and I disliked the possibility of knight h5. And that's why I played bishop e2 first and then queen d2 and castle. But then, unfortunately, white is not in time to fight against black's d5. So that's why queen e2 was really important. And after, let's say, knight d7, long castle, knight e5, king b1, white has a really simple play. We just want to attack on the king side. So g4, knight d4, knight d5, something along those lines. But it would have been a different game. Alright, which one is the third girl who played for Romania after you and Sandu Mihaela? Well, actually, I'm on the first women's board. Then on the second one is Corina Peptan. And then as a reserve, there is Mihaela Sandu and Luminica Kozma. So there are 2 main players and 2 reserves one. And then the junior under 20 girl is our young star, woman FIDE master Miruna Lehach. So you can check actually all the teams' compositions on chess results under the FIDE flag. You can find us in Division 2 Pool B if you're curious. Alright, let's move on. I'm eager to not to be late for Barca's match. So bishop e2, short castle, queen d2, d5. Yeah, so that was actually why my bishop e2 wasn't a good move. Now after e takes, knight takes, knight takes, the position is more or less equal. Bishop h4 followed, g3, queen takes d5. My rook on h1 is hanging, so I have no time to take that bishop on h4. Castle, queen d2, rook d2, bishop e7, bishop f3, rook ac8, g4. During the game I really liked my position, to be honest. As I have the control over the d-file, my position is a little bit more active. Well, I was optimistic. And also my opponent had like 4 or 5 minutes less than me, so I thought I would still have my chances even though the position is really drawish. Or okay, not drawish, maybe drawish is too much, just with a high drawish tendency. Alright, so a5 followed, a good move. Black has to play on the queen side. King b1, a4, knight d4, knight d4, rook d4, the pawn is hanging, so black has to either play a3 or b5. She chose b5, even though I think a3 would have been better, because like this after b5 I could play a3 myself and to fix those pawns. And actually probably all the bishop endgames would be lost for black now, because the pawns on b5 and a4 will become a very easy target for my pieces. Here she played bishop c5, and now in the beginning I wanted to play rook d to d1, but then I had this idea to play rook d3, as she was quite low on time. I thought that she will be really tempted of playing bishop c4, attacking my rook once again, making an easy move. And here I planned rook d7, and the point is that I'm being really tricky, and she failed to spot it. Why? She had to play rook f to d8. After rook d1, bishop b6, well, the position would be balanced, even though I think that white's chances would be better. She played b4 instead, and she failed to notice that bishop b7 is a really big problem for black, because now when the rook goes away, rook c7 happens, and both bishops on the c-file are hanging. The only move which black has in the position is the one which she, unfortunately for me, found, bishop d5. Now I have no time to capture the bishop, as the rook on h1 is hanging, so I'm forced to take, rook takes d5. And here, unfortunately for me again, I failed to find the best move. Bayern will win anyway, don't bother. You think so? Ugh, I know Bayern is a strong team, but I'm still cheering for Barca. I hope to see a nice match, no matter of the result, guys. The only place where the result counted today was in our matches in the chess Olympiad. So now I can just relax and don't think about the results anymore. All right. So here, unfortunately, I got tempted by playing rook takes c5 and going into this rook endgame, which I thought would be with big chances for me, but I didn't assess it correctly. It was actually quite easy for black to make a draw there. After okay, let me show it. After rook c5, bishop d6, rook c4, take. Well, I thought that maybe black would have some troubles holding on to the a4 pawn, but actually it was not the case, and after like 30 more moves it was a draw. Quite a logical one with nothing interesting happening there. But instead I must have taken on b4, and I failed to notice that after bishop b4 c3, black's bishop doesn't have a good square to retreat, because bishop c5 would be met by c4, and now that c5 bishop is in really big trouble, and the only other square for that bishop is bishop a5. But then after rook c4, black is simply losing the a4 pawn. Of course he can play a3, but then b4, so probably this is just, well, if not winning, but with huge advantage for white. So unfortunately I missed my chance here, so it was a draw. All right, I think we have a little bit more of time to check the only other game from the match against there are actually two games from the match against Greece. Okay, I will not show the game between the two junior girls, as it was, or should I show it? There is an interesting choice here. All right, let's go for the only game which ended up not with a draw. I mean the only one which is left. So here our player, the young Irina played with the black pieces against Greeks Anastasia Avramidou, who is quite a titled player. She won the World Junior Championship, I think, once or twice. So the game was definitely not easy. d4, knight f6, c4 e6, knight c3, bishop b4, knight f3, c5, and Nimzovich, e3, short castle, bishop d2, d5. Well, I actually don't like, I know that this variation is viable for black, but I don't really fancy it exactly because of what happened in the game. a3, bishop takes c3, bishop takes c3, that's all theory. Knight e4, rook c1. You see, we get again to this kind of position where it's actually a play for two results, because white has the pair of bishops, and black either plays precisely and survives it or not. The bishop on c8 is quite a bad piece, and that's what we saw actually a lot of today. Knight takes c3, rook takes c3, c takes d4, and here queen takes d4 followed. All the other recaptures were possible, but queen d4 is a fair one. Knight c6, queen d2, d takes c4, bishop takes c4, and here the first inaccuracy followed. Irina played queen f6, which is understandable for an active player not to want to exchange queens, though it was necessary, and probably here it would have been easier for black to minimize white's advantage after king d2, let's say bishop d7, followed by rook f2 d8, bishop e8. Slowly but steadily black would have brought the king to e7, then maybe f6, e5, exchange all the pieces, and be happy with the draw. Instead she played the more ambitious queen f6, short castle, rook d8, queen c2. But here black still struggles a bit with that bishop on c8, so she played d5, a good move. bishop b5 followed. And here, somehow strangely, I would expect her to play the most active bishop f5. The point is that we really want to provoke white into playing e4, because then after bishop d7, white would have weakened the square on d4, and then we would have enough counterplay, and by we I mean black. Instead, she played bishop d7 immediately, and for white it's convenient because like this she gets to keep the pawn on e3. Rook c5 followed, a good move, threatening to take on c6 and then maybe on e5 at some point. Rook a to c8, rook c1. Here again, bishop f5. It would have been always good to include these moves so that white would play e4 and then weaken that d4 square. Instead, she played a6, and here it was white's turn to play not the best move. She took on c6. Instead, it would have been better to play bishop d3, and now bishop f5 would no longer be a threat, and black's problems would still be on. Probably white's plan would be to play something like b4 and then prepare slowly a4 and b5. Instead, she took on c6, and here black would have had a really nice move, which unfortunately Irina did not find. Maybe if she would, maybe she would have even had chances to turn the game around. Hello, Bobby Boulder. Nice to see you. Bayern already lead with 1 goal. Come on, I don't believe it. All right, then we need to move on and wrap it up slowly. All right, bishop takes c6. The nice move which Irina had was b6. And the point is that the bishop cannot go anywhere because of rook takes c5. Then, if the rook takes on e5, then again, rook takes c6, queen b1, let's say, and then bishop f5. And here we highlight the weakness of white's first rank. So capturing on f5 is not possible. We can even take on f5 directly with the queen, because after queen f5, rook c1, knight e1, rook e1, it's simply a mate. And if white after bishop f5 plays something like queen a1, then after rook c to d6, that rook on e5 is stranded, and now we see how at the price of only 1 pawn we solved all our problems. Suddenly black's position is the active one and white is the one who struggles. I think black would have had big chances if finding this to even win the game. If after b6 something like rook c3 would follow, then just rook takes c6, rook c6, bishop takes. And now again, she cannot take on c6 because of the weakness of the first rank, and after knight e5, bishop g2, king g2, queen takes e5. There's absolutely no reason for black to be worse here, as everything is equal and white's king is more exposed. Instead she took on c6 with the rook, but here after knight e5, white won a pawn, and slowly but steadily she also won the game. It wasn't the most precise play afterwards. Black still had some chances to hold the position, but unfortunately she did not. And yeah, this was the only loss from today's match versus Greece. So finally, Corina Peptan made a really fighting draw against Anna Maria Buțar. Both players had chances. I think Corina was the last one to be able to pose some problems for her opponent, but in mutual time trouble they went on to make a draw. So yeah, hello Lowell for life 1-1. Oh my god, I really have to turn that TV on. Hello Bobby Boulder again. What's the subject today? Well, today I was covering up the 3 matches which Romania played during the online chess Olympiad in the 2nd division. So the idea is that we play in the 2nd division, and in our group, which is the B1, 3 teams from the group qualify for the highest division. So normally we are the favorites, and it shouldn't be a problem for us to get into the top 3 places. I even hope that we'll be able to win our group, but we still have to be careful, and there are still some important matches following up tomorrow and after tomorrow. So if you would like to follow our games, you can do that on all the big chess platforms, starting from 12 p.m. Central European Time, 1 p.m. in Romania. And well, I guess thank you for coming around tonight. Thank you for watching today's overview. I hope that you enjoyed the games and the highlights. I think that Romania's team did pretty well today. I'm happy about my play, and I hope that my teammates are also happy with their play, because I think we played quite decent matches. So, alright, let me get to the Barca-Bayern match. I wish you all a nice evening. Bye bye!